Stop! Please don't do this. Joel, please get up!
Trauma. No word summarizes The Last of Us story quite as well as this one word, because it's the single motivating factor that drives the most significant moments of this story. Joel saves Ellie because of his past trauma of losing a loved one. Abby tortures Joel to death over the trauma of watching her father's blood ooze the floor of a room that had so much potential to heal the world. And Ellie embarks on a quest of death, destruction, and carnage to seek retribution for watching her own father figure beaten and broken by the people who lost everything because of him. Trauma breaks everyone in this universe, and Ellie is the most unfortunate victim.
Maybe you should have.
The first time we meet Ellie in the Last of Us universe, we're shown a young, headstrong girl who acts as this beacon of light in a world of darkness. Someone completely unfazed by the horrors surrounding her, someone who can bring us hope and purpose in a life of doubt and apathy. The reason Ellie connects with Joel is because she sees a father figure in the broken man. She sees a past in the broken watch he wears on his wrist. There's a story to tell with Joel and she wants to hear it. Ellie and Joel grow over the course of the game, forging a bond so powerful they manage to cross half of America with the hope of restoring a collapsed world back to the paradise it once was. A world where Joel can watch Ellie start a family and become a caring mother and daughter that could perhaps wash away the memories of watching a lifeless girl cry out in fear and desperation. On their journey they meet and lose friends, suffer traumas so unimaginably real, and kill countless people on the quest to restore peace. However, this story has no such end. Joel is denied everything he has the right to claim, so in a desperate rage he bites back. He kills every single man, woman, and child standing in his way until he finally reaches the room that symbolizes a purgatory. Neither life or death, however, bringing everyone who dares to enter a life of hollow pity and despair. Joel murders the doctor with almost no hesitation and proceeds to rescue Ellie and escape the hospital, leaving behind countless bodies in his pursuit to live a life with his new daughter. However, this selfish decision, motivated by his own personal loss, will forge a new fractured relationship with the girl who gave him the strength to emerge from the darkness. Before entering Jackson and beginning their new life together, Ellie asks for the truth, asks for the doubt to be cleansed from her mind of Joel potentially reverting back to his ruthless traits in an attempt to preserve the only life he cares for. However, he does the opposite. He lies and creates a false tale to avoid justifying his unforgivable crime. This lack of honesty begins to eat away at Ellie throughout the story of The Last of Us Part 2. We see her question this lie more and more, finding new holes in the tale and reaffirming her doubts and suspicions even more with each subsequent interaction. She wants to believe the lie, wants to live a life in peaceful solitude, wants to live a life of happiness. However, the thought of knowing she could have been a savior, someone that could have restored balance to a broken earth, someone that could have saved the countless rotting corpses of the innocent lives she crosses. However, she unfortunately can't. She needs answers, needs to know what lies in that hospital, needs to know what Joel did in that purgatory. Ellie investigates the hospital and finds the very thing she feared to seek. A building completely run down, blood staining the walls, floors, and carpets of the place that was supposed to heal the world. She begins to enter the room where her life was meant to have meaning and purpose, and finds a tape detailing her condition and learning that her sacrifice would have resulted in a vaccine. In a desperate attempt to make sense of this, she replays the tape over and over again, trying to process the information that destroys her mind with every subsequent replay. In a moment of absolute despair, Joel arrives and comforts Ellie, but she's had enough. Enough of the lies, enough of the doubt, and finally demands the truth.
Making a vaccine would have killed you. So I stopped them.
In an overwhelming surge of emotion, Ellie abandons Joel and flees back to Jackson, forging a resentment for her new father figure. Unable to understand or process why someone so loving, so close would commit atrocities so evil and so twisted. This resentment would form into a hatred where even gazing upon him would spark an instant rage, seeing the selfish man who took everything from her, completely ignorant to the father behind the crime who just wanted to protect his own daughter. On a cold evening, Ellie approaches Joel and begins to spark a reunion, where they begin to forge a connection again.
I'm not trying to.
I was supposed to die in that hospital. My life would have fucking mattered. But you took that from me.
Joel, overwhelmed with emotion, can't bring himself to explain why he did what he did, because the thought of reflecting on his lifeless child is simply too much to gaze upon again. He's ready to move on with Ellie and allow the past to be the past if she's ready to accept and forgive his mistake. This is the last night where they both find peace. A brief evening where they both rest knowing that this chapter of their lives is finally over, and the chapter of growth is about to resume. However, for Ellie and Joel, this brief connection will unfortunately be fractured by a woman, hurt by the man who took everything from her. On a morning patrol, Joel and Tommy go missing, which leads Ellie to investigate. Traveling through the rough blizzard and cold air, she eventually arrives at a cabin. Echoes of pain and screams of agony bounce off the walls, causing Ellie to investigate the basement. Completely unaware of the pain, sacrifice, and trauma this will spark in the future events of her life. Joel lays there, covered in blood, groaning in pain, beaten by the executioner who lost her humanity to a corpse he left behind in that purgatory. Ellie attempts to intervene but is restrained and forced to watch her father figure suffer pain so unimaginably cruel it will motivate a vengeance. A selfish pursuit where countless innocent men, women and children will fall in an attempt to avenge the father who she learned to forgive just a couple weeks ago. Joel's death would be the downfall for all three of these characters, most importantly Ellie, who will embark on a quest that will bring her nothing but despair in a selfish pursuit of peace. Ellie sets off on a journey of complete self-destruction, as she hunts down each and every one of the people responsible for her trauma. She beats Nora to a bloody pulp, stabs Jordan in the neck, and destroys everyone that stands between her and Abby's accomplices. On this journey, she becomes a shell of her former self, instead inheriting the traits of Joel in the first game. Ruthless, full of rage, but caring to those she loves. Well, not quite. Joel would put others before himself and would only be selfish in the context of other people. Ellie, not so much. Towards the end of Act 2, there's a moment where Jesse and Ellie have an opportunity to help Tommy while he's fighting off a WLF militia. But instead she abandons Jesse and Tommy in a selfish pursuit to hunt down the woman who killed Joel. This one trait is one of the few ways she distinguishes herself from Joel, making her dislikable and less like the Ellie we've grown to love from the first game. One of my favourite examples of this is this section in the aquarium. Ellie, after murdering hundreds of innocent people, arrives at the aquarium, location of Abby's whereabouts. However, she doesn't find Abby, instead finding Mel and Owen, two people present at Joel's death. Ellie, instead of asking questions, demands the whereabouts of Abby, completely ignorant to why Abby did what she did, ignorant to the justifications for why she did something so unimaginably cruel and sadistic. In a desperate move of survival, she kills both Owen and Mel, with a dying Owen telling Ellie Mel is pregnant. This information completely overwhelms Ellie, as she begins to have a breakdown, followed by Tommy and Jesse's arrival as they comfort her and walk her back to the theatre. At this point in the story, the game begins to ask more and more questions that begin to make us question Ellie's motives more and more. For example, will Abby's death be enough? Has she satisfied the price for vengeance? Is all this just adding to her trauma instead of resolving it? I think it was intentional to criticize her actions at this point, because after discovering Mel's pregnancy, Tommy and Jesse feel disgusted with how far they've let this go, and suggest the idea of returning home. However, unfortunately for them, it's too late to turn back. Abby's watched all her friends perish to the people who took her father from her. So in a desperate measure to get even, she infiltrates the theatre and confronts them. Abby shoots Tommy in the head and chases Ellie to the stage where they both battle in a brutal brawl to the death. The fight ends with a quite literally broken Ellie laying on the floor covered in her own blood, as Abby repeatedly slams Dina's head into the hard concrete in self-defense, threatening to kill her after discovering her pregnancy. This scene is interesting to me personally because it shows both characters are flawed in equal ways. There's no bias here. Both Abby and Ellie have done awful things and are impulsive in their pursuits of vengeance without ever considering the lives of those affected by their conflict. At no point in their journeys do they ever stop to think and question their actions, because exploring such ideas will reveal the most painful truths they're simply too afraid to accept. The scene ends with Abby standing over Ellie, like an imposing reaper stained with the blood of all her friends, threatening her with death if she pursues this quest for retribution. Abby walks away, leaving the scene of death and carnage behind her. Nothing is resolved, there is no resolution. Jesse's corpse stains the wooden floor, Abby still patrols the city, and everyone has lost something that's important to them. It's a bleak moment, only amplified by Gustavo Santello's chilling score, as the camera pans up to reveal Ellie and Dina's lifeless bodies, followed by a cut to black. The next time we see Ellie and Dina, they're living in what can only be described as a blissful paradise. A beautiful, vibrant farm where they live with their newborn son in prosperity. Everything seems perfect initially. They dance around to music, joke around, and take in the beautiful scenery from this rusty tractor. However, all of Ellie's trauma, rage, and pain has manifested and grown into a severe case of PTSD, where even the most subtle noise will trigger violent, sadistic memories of Joel's suffering and torture. In her journal, we learn these symptoms have only gotten worse throughout the years, with these memories becoming more and more twisted and violent. All this trauma and pain will inevitably lead to the selfish decision of abandoning her family, leaving behind her wife who put her baby in harm's way as a selfless ally, leaving behind her son named after the man who selflessly sacrificed himself for a chance of their prosperity, and most tragically leaving behind herself, just so she could have another chance at experiencing a moment of peace, ignorant and blind to the idea of acceptance. Dina hugs Ellie and begs her for another chance, another opportunity to live their days as a loving family. However, she's blind to her suffering, and deaf to the screams that reverb in Ellie's mind. In a selfish abandonment, she walks away and resumes the cycle of violence. With the help of Tommy, Ellie successfully tracks down Abby's location as she sails towards Santa Barbara. Initially, the scenery is beautiful, perhaps a little too optimistic. However, as we progress further into the level, vibrant, almost dreamlike visuals will transcend into a nightmarish pool reflecting the sorrows of a broken woman who finally learns her lesson. Ellie successfully infiltrates the suburb, liberating the dead and fighting her way through the rotting victims. Her path of vengeance leads her to a cell of starved prisoners, who inform us Abby is being held at the pillars, most likely dead. The following segment is probably the most tragic in the entire game. Ellie arrives at a beach full of crucified men and women as she desperately searches for her salvation. Their bodies so unrecognizably grotesque as their skin appears to be torn and their decomposed corpses rotting. In a moment of absolute hopelessness, the idea of turning away starts to sound preferred, until we find Abby, strung up like a piece of cattle, muscles all withered and her body dehydrated and weak. Instead of killing her right here, right now, we instead decide to rescue her and give her the illusion of peace and forgiveness, like a cat playing with its prey. After a few minutes of silence, we walk towards a boat as the opportunity to yet again abandon this quest and forgive our enemy becomes the most logical solution. However, the screams of her father and sounds of her club splitting his skull are simply too overwhelming to forgive. Ellie, in a surge of rage, grabs Abby, throwing her into the water.
gonna fight you. Yes, you will.
This is the moment where our beloved protagonist who we followed throughout this entire journey becomes the villain. The friendly young girl who sacrificed for so many people morphed into a harbinger of chaos who will stop at nothing to see her enemies choke on their own blood in a full measure to find peace in the suffering of her victims. Ellie and Abby battle to the death, in a brutal brawl that feels so uncomfortable, so unnecessary, so undeniably pointless. However, a lesson is learned here. In a moment of clarity, Ellie drowns the woman who took everything from her, choking her with their blood, spilling the ocean of their shared regrets and sacrifices. However, in a moment of clarity, she reflects back to a conversation with Joel, the last dialogue they shared before watching his tragic demise. Ellie releases Abby and offers her peace and forgiveness as she sails away into the dark abyss, leaving Ellie in a reality of her greatest fear: being alone. The final scene of the game shows us the farm that was once such a beacon of hope, slandered with the selfishness of a woman who gave up on the opportunity for redemption and growth to instead pursue the path of destruction and damnation. In the house, all she finds are empty rooms, cobwebbed walls, and a cold breeze. Everything that once gave this house the title of a home has now vanished, alongside her family. In the final shot of the game, she picks up Joel's guitar and attempts to play his favourite song, however can't due to her missing fingers. This song was her last memory of Joel that wasn't visual, a love and passion so powerful it can only be expressed through a musical motif, which Ellie can't play. She puts the guitar down and stares off into the distance, reflecting back to a conversation of acceptance and forgiveness. In this moment, she finally learns to forgive everyone who's been associated in her life and associated in her downfall as a character. She learns to forgive Joel, learns to forgive Abby, and most importantly, learns to forgive herself for allowing her grief to affect everyone in her life, including her. Ellie puts the guitar down and leaves the house as the camera pans over towards the window, walking through a field as we fade to black and credits roll. What does this all mean? Honestly, it's ambiguous. Where Ellie's going, we don't know. What she hopes to achieve is only up to speculation, and trauma was the thing that destroyed her. Like and subscribe for more content in the future, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.